Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will bring you the tea. Welcome to Chronicle Speaks.
Friday was Dre Day, and boy, what a beautiful day it was. I traveled to St. Louis last Tuesday night after reporting on this story for 2 years and finally wanted to see justice served with my very own eyes. After sitting through closing arguments and 18 hours of deliberation, walking into the courtroom of Judge John Ross for the last time, seeing marshals lined up and watching the Griggs family walk in, I knew this was it. Finally, the verdict. Is it the verdict that we were all waiting for? You guys know how the story ended. We're going to get into that and so much more, but before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notification so you don't miss out on any of this tea. Now let's get back into it. September 16th, 2022 will forever be known to me as Dre Day. It's the day that Andre Montgomery finally got justice. March 14th, 2016 was the date of his untimely demise. It took 6 years and 6 months for the family to finally get closure, and you all know that they got it. Andre was a caring, loving, and laughable individual, according to his close family. And in all honesty, from hearing their story, he seemed to be the same funny kid that we all met and fell in love with years ago on the hit TV show Welcome to Sweetie Pie's on the OWN network. Who knew that with watching all of these years of this loving, hardworking family who took the soul food industry by storm would have an uncle that killed his slain brother's only son? Flew in Tuesday night, got up early for court on Wednesday, and walked into the courtroom. First of all, shout out to Randomness of Vail and Today's Celebrity News for having absolutely no ego and being so kind and telling me exactly what to expect when I got there. They welcomed me in with open arms and we stuck together for those last 3 days. We get into the courtroom and we sit on the media row right behind these guys in these suits and ties. I think to myself, they must be some extra attorneys or something, but boy was I wrong. They asked, what news media are you guys from? And we all respond, we have YouTube channels. One looked directly at me and said, you wouldn't happen to be Chronicle Speaks, would you? I'm thinking to myself, oh God, what the hell did I do? I'm like, yes. So Val and Jay, they walk out the room. I think they go to the other courtroom to go get something. And so I'm sitting here with these suit and tie guys all by myself. The same guy continues the conversation with me and he said the breakdown you did on the cell phone towers was excellent. He said we did a slideshow ourselves and showed it during the trial and no one understood it. He goes on to say we got back to the office and was shown your video and we couldn't believe how thorough you were and able to break it down the way you were and make it so understandable. He said, good work. They all shake their heads in unison like, yeah, you did that. I said, oh, wow, thank you. He continued to say that the video circulated the office all day. My eyes get big. He said, you probably got an influx of views and followers that day. Still in amazement, I said, wow, thank you again. I wondered to myself, who are these guys? Because the only ones that I know that showed a slideshow was the FBI. Child, it was. The FBI watched my damn video, and in so many words, they told me that I made it easier to understand than they did. Baby! Now, although I'm not happy that the feds are watching, I appreciate y'all showing me love. Y'all can unsubscribe now, nothing else to see here, but thank you anyway. So, the day of closing arguments, Wednesday, Tim walks in. Now, everyone else has seen him. I'm the only newbie. He walks in shackled. You can hear the shackles on his feet, but where we sit, you can't see them. His face is much smaller. Those chipmunk cheeks he had smiling in that inmate picture are gone. Cheeks are sunken in. His neck is very skinny and he wears these oversized suits, so it's hard to really see his body. But with the way the suit fits his body, Tim has lost a substantial amount of weight. You all ask, his hips are much smaller, but still there. His arms look much smaller, but he still got ass. My thick girls know what I'm talking about. You can lose weight everywhere else, but them thighs and that ass, got it in your jeans. They just don't leave like that. My thick girls, like I said, y'all know what I'm talking about. Now, he's got a low fade, no facial hair, and he looked like he definitely had missed a few nights of sleep. Whenever Miss Robbie was in the courtroom, he would always turn his back to her when they would uncuff him and cuff him back. They must have had this conversation before about her not liking to see him cuff, and he honored that. Tim walking into the courtroom was always this walk of shame. He had to walk past the jury section, which they weren't there. They always come in later. Then he walks past the Griggs section. Then he walks past his family section. He always has this shameful look on himself, and he'll look down at his feet until he gets to his family section. And then when he sees his family, he always throws up his head, nods, just gives them some kind of inkling like, I'm glad you're here. When he would see specific friends like JR or a couple of other guys, he would kind of give them a thank you. He would always nod back like, you got it. I will say this, both sides of the family are very sweet. They all knew that we were from the media because of where we sat. Miss Robbie has spoken before. Aunt Linda has held the door open when she walked out before me. Monique seemed a little guarded, but she would still smile and acknowledge, as well as Mr. Bussey, and there were a few other family members there as well. But like I said, they were all very nice. Now, I've walked past the Griggs sister and brother and other members of the Griggs family. They're all very sweet. And Mama Griggs, no. That's my girl. You know you my girl. She is just the sweetest lady of all times. The day of closing arguments. And before we get into all of that, I'm going to make y'all laugh real quick. Y'all praise me on my court skills and investigative skills. I got something to tell y'all. This was my first time being in a courtroom ever. I pay my traffic tickets. I don't fight them. I just give them the money. I don't go to court. I'm a good researcher, but I don't go to court. But let's get into these closing arguments. So with the closing arguments, Judge John Ross began to speak about the jury's instructions, and he also let it be known that Dr. Jane Turner, who was the doctor that completed the autopsy on Mr. Montgomery, was not there. You remember a couple of videos before, I told you guys that her son was getting married, so she was unable to make it. Judge John Ross read her autopsy report, and the jury had to go along with that. So I took notes from the best of my ability. And the closing argument started with the prosecution side, and it went like this. 5 fraudulent life insurance policies applied for 18 months before his nephew's death. Name, social, and birth date were all listed. However, Tim wouldn't remember that same birthday after trying to get money from the policy. 5 policies Tim tried to get before having Andre taken out. He had his nephew executed. Bro, he ain't gonna be around much longer. We gotta meet in person because Tim does in-person meetings and on burner phones. Let's just start with the wire fraud conspiracy caused by telephone and mailing on his scheme. The applicant understands the application and the insurance company tried to contact Andre. The question isn't whether Andre signed, but if Tim and Wally deceived the company. After Tim kicked Andre out of his apartment, Tim still paid for the policy. 5 different companies with wrong income and assets. And his mother, Ms. Robbie, never knew anything about these policies. He didn't want anyone to know about these policies, including Andre's mother, Michelle Griggs, who he called a piece of shit. Wally told Tim to impersonate Andre on these insurance calls. Tim agrees, and Tim tells Wally that he hasn't seen him in over a week. However, the insurance company, Americo, has done a PO interview with Andre. Personal information was lied on. Tim is a willing participant in impersonating his nephew. Tim admitted to filling out the insurance info, saying that Andre didn't have a doctor, yet put info down that he did. Tim Norman tried to order the death certificate for Andre 4 days after his death, but it wasn't ready yet. Elements of murder for hire. First element, used or caused another to use facility of interstate commerce. Cell phones are everywhere in this case. Texts with Terica Ellis are on his subscribed phone. Tim told Terica to reach out to him on his cell, and Travail was called 2 minutes after Terica learned Andre's location on Taylor Road at the La Quinta. They then go and get burner phones. They call each other in the area of the Walgreens. The phones are only active the day of the homicide. Right after Terica called Tim saying something happened to Andre, what should I do? Tim then calls Darrell Howard to get the money. Then the prosecution starts to backtrack a little bit. She said September 23rd, 2015, Wally gets a text from Tim, and Tim says he might not make it 6 months. 5 months later, he texts Wally again, and he says shit has changed. He might not make it. Let's meet in person. Now, Travail Hill, who Tim said was a wonderful mentor to Andre, had to go on Andre's Instagram to find a picture of Andre. On June 12, 2015, Andre accepted Hill on Instagram, and Travail told Tim. Travail had no ambiguity about what was supposed to happen that day. Day of the murder, Terica told Tim that Andre was shot. Tim says leave, don't go back. Tim calls Darrell Howard to pick up the money. The next day, DJ calls to give his condolences. Tim said fuck him. The next day, Tim told DJ to give the money to Loco. Y'all know that's Travail. DJ takes the money to Loco. Travell said Tim was his mentor and he believed the money was for the murder. She goes on to say anything of pecuniary value was received. $10,000 to Terica, $5,000 to Travell Hill, and $450,000 Tim was supposed to receive in life insurance. How do we know Terica got the money? Because of her huge deposits. They want you to believe Terica made money from the club. Terica makes $300 a night, and unfortunately, the Bottoms Up Club cannot provide financials. Tim was the architect of this plan. Tim caused, knew, aided, and abetted the scheme. Terica got the final address of Andre on the prepaid phone Tim told her to get. The only connection to Terica and Travell is Tim Norman. All of the texts and phone calls made after 7 p.m. on the date of Andre's death are because Tim wanted Andre murdered. Tim wants people to believe he was in Minneapolis airport when he got the call of Andre's murder. Tim was actually in the Lambert airport here in St. Louis. Tim told Travell to murder Andre, and Travell, who is still loyal to Tim obviously, rushes and gets a 380 to do the job. Terica got the phone number of Travell Hill from Tim. Tim sought to get in contact with Terica on Facebook with her to have her be a part of the plan. Not everyone knew everyone else's part. Tim schemed and told everyone what they needed to do their part. And she ended with saying reasonable doubt gives reason and common sense. Tim's attorney Michael Leonard gets up and says, we can yell and we can scream, we can raise our voices, but you need to consider 3 elements. Each of those charges, if proof fails on either one of them, you must acquit Mr. Norman. Doesn't mean you make up evidence when it's not presented. Types of proof you rely on when you make the most important decisions in your life. Would that rely on a stripper who admitted she lied to you? Then you would rely on Travell? What's up with that guy? Travell told y'all Tim ain't got nothing to do with it. You made a promise on 9/6 that if the government wasn't able to prove each element beyond a shadow of a doubt, you would acquit Mr. Norman. Not a single witness had one unkind thing to say about his character. He was a good person. Everyone said he was. Miss Griggs didn't even have bad words to say about Mr. Norman. Let's start with the Carl Napa text exchange with Tim. Tim is trying to get him into music school. Tim texts Carl, thanks bro. Then we get an objection from prosecution. Then they have a sidebar. The objection was overruled and Mr. Leonard continues to talk about the text sent to Mr. Napa. Tim says, I'm about to give birth to an 18-year-old know-it-all. Mr. Leonard goes on to say that Tim wanted to step up to the plate and help Andre. Even Miss Griggs thought it was a good idea. Andre texts Tim, I love you, Unc. This is a wonderful chance. I can be in $1 million studio. Andre was happy. Tim was stepping up to the plate to be the father figure Andre needed him to be. Why would he bring him across country to kill him? The government wants you to think that this is all a ruse. You don't believe that nonsense. The October 7th, 2014 meeting you heard in detail about, Andre sitting at the kitchen table to sign docs. Child, then Mr. Leonard steps away and you can't hear him because he's nowhere close to the mic, so I missed a lot. Eventually he comes back to the mic and he says Tim didn't get cross-examined on that meeting because they knew it wasn't true. Now prosecution calls the meeting make-believe. Why? They want you to believe Tim traveled from LA to kill Andre. Then Mr. Leonard, in his animated way, walks away from the microphone again. Can't hear him, so I miss a lot. He comes back and he says, made up theory to lure Andre back here. Then he says, it gets stupider. Terica Ellis is here to get years shaved off her sentence. She was told she would never see her children again. She had an incentive to lie on Tim. Tim didn't even have her number. He orchestrated a plan to fly across the country to plot to kill his nephew with a stripper who he doesn't even have the number for. He had to message her on Facebook for her number because she constantly changes it. Why would he include a woman who wants to get paid for sex? She would like a lot of money, so why add her? So let's talk about the deposits of money. She works Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. She admits that she's good at her job. She makes money from dancing and for having sex with men at night. So she makes money, so she wouldn't need to get money from Tim. It took her 16 seconds when asked how much money she got from Tim. She lied. We knew she got that money from Tim, but she also got money from another source. Tim only gave her $3,000. He danced 3 nights in a row. She had sex with men for 3 nights in a row. And then she got $3,000 from Tim. Here's what she said at trial. Tim wanted her to help locate Andre, help him get back what he hasn't already sold, and get the location so he can get it back. There was no plot, just get it back. For 10 months, Ms. Robbie, the investigator, and Tim have all tried to get their stuff back. No sense in killing him when you're trying to get back $1 million in stolen goods. Why kill him? Now let's talk about the cell phone. Tim had plenty of girls. Per the show, Tim had to use a phone, and anytime someone called you, you had to put the phone on speaker, and Tim did. Tim didn't want anyone to know that a stripper was calling his phone. So they got burner phones from Walgreens. Why wasn't Tim in a disguise? Tim knew about cameras. Tim didn't know that Terica knew Andre until after they had sex. Tim is that clever to put all of this together, find a shooter, plot with Terica, and all of this happened in one day. Travell is a heavy drug user who said Terica wasn't even involved. Oh, it wasn't no girl involved. Child, it was another objection. Obviously, that statement that Travell allegedly said was a little fib because Travell never said that. The government claims there was a meeting with white boy Chris and Travell to plan the murder of Andre, although Travell says it never happened. There was no evidence because it never happened. Travell says that he and Tim never talked about the murder for Andre. It has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Tim conspired the death of Andre, and no one can prove that. Travell said that he got a gun to scare him. He got a small gun because his intent was not to kill him. Travell was only wanting to hurt him, so he took a small gun, but nobody told him to get the gun. Now let's talk about the insurance mail and wire allegation. Good faith instruction. Tim is not stupid. He runs restaurants. Only Wally is insured by the state of Missouri for insurance. You have to decide whether Wally and Tim reached an agreement. Wally was an insurance agent who did what he did for his own economic reasons. Tim and Wally didn't have the same reason. We have no proof that Tim made an agreement with Wally. Don't be moved by hype or voice raising by any of them. Go on if they have reasonable doubt. That was the end of Mr. Leonard's closing arguments, and the government finished with this. DJ Howard paid Travell to execute Andre. The plan was executed at the defendant's desire. Tim sat up there and spun tales for you, and that's what he does. Let's talk about his lies. He claimed to be truthful about his 2012 life insurance documents, but he lied on that, and now he's admitted to it. He admitted to having multiple phones to lie to different women. He lied about having an abundance of money. It's not real. We found that out in his American Express judgment of over $215,000. Only time he becomes emotional is when he's talking about Travell or when he's talking about himself, never about Andre. Every witness has corroborated the story, metadata, cell phone towers, all of this evidence, and it's your duty to find him guilty. After hearing the closing arguments, the jury was then sent off to deliberate. I'm going to tell you this, we all thought that it would be a slam dunk for the prosecution early on because of all of the evidence they had and everyone pleading guilty except for Tim. Travell throwing the whole case and saying that Tim had nothing to do with it and it was all placed on him made everybody a little skeptical. We waited for 3 days. Note after note after note the jury would send in. They asked for flight records for Terica, text between Tim and his attorney, the Forrester's application, the September 12th text from Andre to Tim saying, "I love you, Tim." That's the one I was like, uh-oh, y'all going the wrong direction now. They asked for a single text from Chris Napa. Chris Napa is the one that was over at Nelly School of Music. They wanted the prepaid phone records for all. Hill and Ellis was underlined. Track phone records that show activation on Tim and Terica. They came back asking for all of Tim Norman phone records, and all was underlined. They want all of the evidence submitted by Darrell Howards, aka DJ Beats, including a picture of Travell Hill. They need text messages, Travell's photo, and photo of the cash. They also wanted to know why there was no mention of Darrell Howard's, aka DJ Beats' cooperation agreement. The government said because there wasn't one. They then wanted to know the difference between conspiracy to commit murder for hire and the crime of murder for hire. Very last note, which was note number 9 that the jury sent in, was can we get the flight records of Tim Norman on 3/14 and 3/15? And when they said that, I said, oh, I think we got him. So again, you guys know we waited the full 18 hours for the jury to deliberate. So I had nothing to do but take notes. So the day of the actual verdict, I took these notes. Day 9 of the trial and day 3 of deliberation, Tim looks very melancholy. He has on an all-black suit and a white shirt. He continues to yawn. Tim looks very tired. He walks in and he seems to drag his feet a little bit more than the days prior. It's almost like the feeling in the room is that we know today is the day. Again, with Miss Robbie being in the room, Tim does not want her to see his cuffs. So he's walking with his right side to his mother. The left side, he places his cuffs on that side. While walking to his chair, he again turns his back to his mother. He's uncuffed. He sits down and The jury is brought in at 9:05 and we are at hour 15, almost 16 of deliberation. The courtroom has a cold feel to it. Not in the literal sense, but more of a spiritual sense. Just the energy was just very cold. Not the people in the courtroom, but just, I'm good at picking up on energy, and something about the energy that day just gave me cold. Feel it in the air. Is something about this day is just, it feels different. Tim watches the jury walk in, almost to try to get a feel, to see what was on their minds. As soon as they sat down, he turned his head, looked towards the judge. Any way this verdict goes, lives will be changed forever. If the prosecution wasn't able to prove their case, the Griggs family will never receive closure. Their eyes, they all know who did it, but if the person that did it gets off, do you ever get closure? Tim is found guilty. Tim will more than likely serve life in prison. He's all that Miss Robbie has left. Big Andre is gone. Little Andre is gone. TJ doesn't really have a relationship with her anymore, and I don't know what's going on with Tim's other son. This family is going to go through a lot. Either way, both families will definitely suffer a loss. Either way this goes, but at the end of the day, Miss Robbie will still have Tim here on this earth with her. Now, the jury has taken us on an up and down roller coaster ride. They have dedicated 9 days of their lives, and in the end, 18 hours of deliberation time, day in and day out, hearing testimony, seeing evidence. They had a lot on them. Yes, we were ready for it to be over, but we wanted the right verdict. At 11:58 a.m., 18 hours after jury deliberation, we were all called back into the courtroom. There were court marshals lined up everywhere. Family, friends, relatives, everyone packed into the room. When I saw the Griggs family come in, I said, okay, this is definitely it. The judge advised us that the jury has finally reached a verdict. Oh my God, it was so scary. We're all on pins and needles. The jury comes in. Looking at their face, you can't really tell what the answer is, but we'll all find out very soon. The judge asked the jury if they've reached a verdict. They advise that they have. The jury passes the verdict to the clerk, who then passes it to the judge, and now we all wait. The judge announces, count 1, conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Tim was found guilty. Count 2, murder for hire resulting in death, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, guilty. Guilty on all 3. Tim looks over to his mother, and I believe his girlfriend was sitting beside his mother, and he says, it's gonna be okay. The Griggs family breaks down into tears of joy. They finally got their justice. I saw Big Ed. He broke down, but he's a big guy, and I know he really wasn't trying to show that. So he kind of put his head down a little bit. He took his pointer finger and his thumb and kind of pressed them into his eyes a little bit to stop the tears. And then he looked back up. He knew he had to be strong. Cousin Michelle was on the right side of Miss Robbie, and I believe Tim's girlfriend was on her left. Cousin Michelle had her arms around Miss Robbie and his girlfriend. The girlfriend broke down profusely. We all had to stand up for the jury to be escorted out. Miss Robbie did not stand up. I don't know if she was in shock. She didn't hear it. I don't know what was going on, but Miss Robbie sat there. They gave a day of sentencing, but at the time, I didn't hear it. Tim's attorney advised that he'll be out of town on that date, and he asked if the date could be changed. I believe the judge advised that he would be okay with that. Tim's attorney also said that he will be filing an appeal, but we already knew that. Tim looked upset, but he remained strong the whole time. When he was walking out, right before he went out the door, he said, y'all be sure to take care of mama. It was a lot to deal with, and the difference between this trial and most cases, these two families known each other. They've chilled together. They've hung around each other. Caused hurt all the way around, and now he's more than likely facing life. Griggs family had a lot to say about this whole situation. You can click the link at the top right to view that. I just want to give y'all this little tidbit. On Thursday, I did see Charles Crenshaw there, and he was sitting with the rest of his family, and he kept glancing over at Tim, and he couldn't look at him for long. He would slowly look over at Tim, and then he'd slowly look back in the front towards the judge area, and you could see him kind of gritting his teeth, and you could see he was just very upset. He was lied to for a very long time. And out of everybody blood-wise, he was probably deceived the most because he was still going on trips, going out of town with Tim. Tim even took a policy out on Charles, so Charles was probably thinking this could have been me. But he took one of Charles' closest friends. They would fall out from here to there. But Charles really loved Andre, and Andre really loved Charles. Charles was so hurt. You could tell that he just wanted this to be over, and he wanted justice for Andre, and he got it. And he decided to take pictures with the Griggs family. He had on his shirt for Andre as well, but his had a picture of him and Andre on it. Aunt Linda was in it as well. Monique's daughter. So you can see the family still rides for Miss Robbie. That's their aunt, sister, whatever. However, they're still standing for right, and right is right. And Tim was wrong, and I guarantee you, after hearing all that evidence, after seeing all those pictures and seeing how everything was plotted, they're hurt. I will continue following this story through the sentencing, keeping everyone updated. I thank you guys so much for being in my live, sending cash apps and donations for my trip and everything else. I never asked for it, but the fact that y'all have done all of that for me, I greatly appreciate and love each and every one of you. Prayers to the Griggs family and also the Montgomery family. At the end of the day, Tim is a bad seed. Y'all ain't got nothing to do with that. It's on Tim. So prayers to each and every one of you. I love all of y'all. I know y'all are going to be down in the comments. You know my videos usually are not this long. However, I have gone a whole week without being on video to let you know what happened. So I had to give you guys the information on what happened. But y'all leave a comment. Tell me what you think, and you know how we do. We'll talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my new episodes.